The cost of living really is a challenge for everyone, young families to seniors. There's a lot that contributes to that. For people who own a home, the property taxes that they're paying, the fact that we have the highest corporate and individual marginal income tax rates in the entire country. The energy costs are really high here on Long Island. Whether it's the cost to fill up your oil tank, to heat your home, or to fill up your gas tank to get to work. There's a lot of costs related to healthcare. The fact that networks have shrunk since Obamacare has gone into place, as practices get bought up by hospitals, and we're seeing premiums and deductibles go up. Everything adds up, and people have a different breaking point. And there's no one single solution, one piece of legislation that is going to make all of our challenges go away, but it's important for us to elect people to office who understand the plight of our small business owners, who are foregoing their own paycheck in order to pay their employee. Because all of these costs that contribute to your overhead impact your ability to balance both sides of the ledger. We get it. Our individuals, families, we all have to balance a budget. Local governments have to. Small businesses have to. The only people who don't have to balance a budget is the federal government. They don't even pass budgets. They've only passed one federal budget since 2007. So we need to elect people who have experience not just signing the back of a check, but the front of a check as well, and taking advantage of any opportunity to reduce the cost of living, to reduce the burdensome regulations that are driving businesses out of state. We need to create not just more public sector jobs, we need to encourage more private sector growth and good paying private sector jobs. We have to be in touch with that as well, and we have too many businesses leaving here, and it's unfortunately driving our young families away. Seeing money coming back to our area like everywhere else impacted by Sandy. There's a lot of outrage on the streets, whether you live out here in the town of Southampton or you live in the village of Mastic Beach. We're tired of reading the new Newsday story of the new deadline and the new excuse as to why we're waiting longer. We want action. When it comes time for an election, we want our incumbent to come here under the banner of promises made, promises kept. Not give me another 2 years and I'll try to get it done next time. This is something that should have been done by now. We shouldn't even be sitting here trying to answer that question. So I think that the best way that we can protect our seashores is making sure that that Sandy money that has gone everywhere else other than the 1st Congressional District comes here in 2015. The incumbent earlier pointed out that right after the storm hit, we had a couple of breaches that were filled. These barges left. I don't know why they didn't leave without finishing some of these other urgent needs at that time. Why it left, and now we're hearing that it's on the whether it's in California or if it's in Virginia, that these barges should be right here finishing this work to protect our barrier beaches. And there's also, and as my opponent pointed out, there is a temporary restraining order that was filed last week as a result of the Audubon Society. And I don't think that our federal government should be prioritizing piping plovers over humans.
And what the president was proposing is that we provide money to combat these gangs, to combat the drug lords, and to provide opportunity for real economic development in those countries. That's the root cause, and that's what we need to do. But for schools, to the extent that they're disproportionately impacted, the federal government has an obligation to step in.
I would argue that the federal government has an obligation to make sure that this crisis isn't upon us in the first place. I mean, the president is sending a very clear message to these parents in these Central American and Southern American countries that if they turn their kids over to coyotes and their kids get here, that they'll be granted amnesty. One of the best examples you could come up with of recent dysfunction in Washington is the president put forth his proposal, the Senate Democrats put forth their proposal, and the House Republicans put forth the proposal. This was all in July. And then at the end of the July, the Congress went home for their recess. The president went to Martha's Vineyard to work on his golf score. And they worked with immigrants. We all have the immigrant story. But just because you put out a bill and you call it comprehensive immigration reform does not mean that that needs to be the only way. And if you want to solve any of the challenges related to immigration as a problem, you need to deal with legal immigration. And you need to secure our borders. You need to secure our to each other. Because Congress went back into session for the last 2 weeks. And while they were there, they should have been voting on a compromise. The problem is that you have people in Washington who their only version of compromise is to get it 100% their way. And an active dialogue going on up in Albany to try to protect our aquifer. And I think that everyone really, if you live here on Long Island, if you grew up in our waterways, you could visit our beaches, we are all pro-environment. And it's unfortunate that we even are having this debate. But what's very important in finding a solution with regards to these water quality concerns is that we are striking a final agreement that is reasonable. And to have a goal of having water quality that is better quality than this Poland Spring, and not worrying at all about the impacts on the unintended consequences on businesses is unfortunate. Now my opponent talks about how being pro-environment is pro-business, and in many cases, in many industries, that's very true. But I've seen on this particular issue, there's been so many sound bites and misunderstandings of fact that nothing's getting done at all. So I would advocate for all interested parties who want to see legislation done in Albany that we spend this time outside of session to try to hammer out a final agreement. If you visit my opponent's website right now, on his website it tells you that if you want to keep your doctor, you can, and if you want to keep your plan, you can. And again, as I mentioned, with regards to Tom Price or Ted Poe or Tom Coburn, there are numerous proposals that are out there that are being discussed about allowing small businesses to pool policies, to allow the portability of policies across state lines, to allow those in the Medicaid population who aren't going back to work because they're afraid they're going to lose their Medicaid coverage, to allow more private choice so that they can go back into the workforce and have a plan that best fits their policy for their family. There's solutions with regards to tax credits to allow families who are struggling to make ends meet to be able to go out and purchase a better policy that fits their family. These are all in bill form right now. So to suggest that we don't have any solutions is just absolutely inaccurate, and I would recommend that you update your website. Are watching ads from the Democratic Congressional Committee where there's a senior from Blue Point telling seniors here in this crowd that I support privatizing their Social Security, which I have never said in any way, shape, or form. I never will, and I don't support it. Preserving and protecting the Social Security guarantee for our seniors who are relying on it, paid into it. It's a commitment and a promise that was made to them that they expect. And for people who are close to retirement, they all need to know that this system that they paid into, that the money is going to be there. And again, I have never in any way, shape, or form supported privatizing any component of your Social Security. And it's unfortunate that the Democratic Congressional Campaign Committee decides that they really, really want to keep my opponent in. They really want to hold on to their power, their prestige, their perks. They will say anything at all costs. My opponent really wanted to have an honest debate on facts. He would make a statement right now to this audience with the cameras rolling, calling on the Democratic Congressional Campaign Committee to take down that ad of that senior in Blue Point. Because what he is saying is untrue, and it's shameful that you're letting this go on. You should make a statement. It definitely kills all of us to watch how much we rely on countries that hate America. And right now, as we all watch the news, we all want to see more energy independence, more reduced reliance on oil altogether, especially reduced reliance on foreign oil. As far as oil profits and oil companies, it's crazy that we are spending more at the pump so that you have speculators and individuals lining their own pockets. Time where the Democrats had one-party rule in Congress, and right now, since then, you've had Republicans and Democrats sharing power. And I think that rather than just the sound bites that sound well, I'd like to actually see action on that. My opponent voted against the Keystone XL pipeline project. I would have voted for it. We have a difference of opinion on that, and that's okay. I believe that we can safely be utilizing our own domestic energy resources that can reduce our reliance on foreign oil. And I also think long-term we need to reduce our reliance on oil altogether. And there's a lot of alternative ways that we can fuel our gas tanks, that we can heat our homes. We need to continue to pursue that, so we're actually reducing the president's strategy, and I hate saying it, but I'm just being candid here. The president's strategy has a 0% chance of working, and I really wish that it did. I really do. But he's using military airstrikes and relying on the local ground forces. I've been to Iraq. I've met the Iraqi army. I've spent time with Iraqi law enforcement. It is a victory to get them to show up for work. If it's a precinct that's a quarter mile from your house and you're expecting a 0% threat of anything happening in your jurisdiction that day, just getting you to show up for victory. To expect this element that won't show up to work to bring the fight to destroy ISIS on the ground, an element that makes Al-Qaeda look like Boy Scouts, is entirely unrealistic. I think that, now the president contradicted himself in his speech. He says this war is going to be, well, this is going to be different like anything in the past in Iraq and Afghanistan because there's not going to be any boots on the ground. And then in the same exact speech he says, I'm sending another 495 troops to Iraq. So, I don't know if they're riding magic carpets or they're wearing something other than boots. The fact is that we have 1,500 men and women who are going to be on the ground, and they need to be well led. I would encourage the president to identify an experienced general on the ground to be able to give them the flexibility and resources to implement their vision to be able to bring the fight to ISIS. I do not trust the Iraqi leadership to lead our people. I want to know who's going, who those 1,500 American service members are, what their skill sets are, what their mission is, and who's going to lead them. Because this is going to get worse before it gets better. If we I support term limits for many different reasons. One of which is I believe that it's the intent of our founding fathers that we had people who would step up, they would bring their energy, their ideas, they would make an impact, and they would move on. When I started running for Congress, I had colleagues said, Lee, you could stay in the state Senate for 40 years. I said, I don't want to spend 40 years in the New York State Senate. I don't want to go down to Washington and make a career out of that. I want to bring my energy, my ideas, try to make a positive impact, and then move on. That's the intent of our founding fathers, and I think that we would be better served if we didn't have people, with Charlie Rangel's there for what, 42, 44 years at this point. We get people who they get so comfortable and they stay there forever, and that stagnancy of ideas, it's not healthy, it's not helpful. By the way, 75% of Congress used to be military veterans. That number now is less than 1 in 5. If you want to secure our borders and protect America's interests overseas, if you want to repeal and replace Obamacare, if you want to stop Common Core, I will offer up my ideas and the best solutions facing the best solutions you can think of to represent you in Washington.